Hello everybody, welcome to Megha Discourse. And do you know that drama has came from poetry? Or do you know the difference between line and sentence and the difference between stanza and paragraph? So, if you call yourself a English literature lover, then you might be already familiar with these differences. And if not, then let me tell you that you are at the right place. If you want to know about all of the minute differences between different literary genres, what is a genre? What are the different subgenres? And what is the key difference among all of these genres? And at last, we would be also talking about what is literature exactly. So this video is for those students who are preparing for any examination of English literature. And you can also watch it for your own knowledge because this will be like a cherry on the cake. And I guarantee you that after completing this video, you will separate yourself from the unserious candidates and you will become one of those persons in the room who knows about English literature, who owns the basics of English literature. And only on the basis of basics, you can go to the advanced level. So be it any exam, be it your UGC NET JRF in English literature or your journey to become an assistant professor, this is very beneficial. Let us first understand what is literature. So basically, literature is any written work, but not any written work. It is a written work that has some beauty, that has some art. Because just imagine that I have a book and that is a book of geography, history, political science or any subjects, be it maths. So that book is also written by somebody, written by some writer. But I would not call it a literature because literature means that it should have some art. It should have some appeal. It should have some aesthetic appeal. Aesthetic means that is related to our five senses. There should be something which touches our heart. There should be something which, satisfies our soul. The words that we read on that page. So basically, literature is meant to be something which appeals us, which satisfies our soul. Literature is something which gives us knowledge. Not just data and the information. It is about the awareness, our awareness of our heart and so many things. Literature makes us aware. Literature is something which has a universality. What is universality? That across the universe, throughout the universe, be it different nation, different people, different genders, different races, experiences are all the same. We all love, we all hate, we all have envy, we all have lovers, we all cry, we all face politics of this world. So literature is something which connects all of us. That is why we say that it is a reflection of society. Now, if I have to write literature, then if I have to write a book, then I will use some method. I will use some form. And those forms, those categories are known as genres. How? If I have to share my feeling about something, about the day, about how I feel about certain person or thing, then I would definitely want to share. How will I share? I can write an essay, I can write a novel, I can write a short story on it, I can write a poem, maybe some elegy, maybe some ode, maybe some sonnet. So let us know the key differences between all of these genres. So now we should know that literature can be divided into two parts. First we have prose and then we have poetry. So poetry means that whenever we express our feelings through some music, it is a kind of lyric. Poetry is something which follows some rhyme scheme, some rhythmic pattern. It follows a kind of form, that is poetry. But prose means something that is written. It does not follow any rhythm. There would be no rhyme. There would be no rhyme. In the poetry, we have lines, but in the prose, we have sentences. Now you know the difference. Line here basically means that you can write however you like. If I say, there is a red, red rose, then it might be possible that this is not grammatically correct, but for me it is a line, but for a poet it is a line. So line is always correct, and that is why we do not look at grammar in poetry. We can reverse the words. I can call dungeon horrible rather than horrible dungeon. Well, this is an example from Paradise Lost. But in prose, we have to write grammatically correct. And that is why, because we follow the grammar, lines in prose, we call them sentences because they do have a pattern of subject, verb and object. And these sentences makes paragraph. But in poetry, all those lines makes stanzas. So I hope I have clarified your this doubt. Now let us move further and let us talk about poetry. So in the poetry, we also have subgenres, right? What is genre? Let me tell you. So literature has two kinds of genres. First we have poetry and then we have prose. Genre means classification. Genre means, for just consider an example where you are just, you have so many books and you have to arrange these books in some shelf, in your bookshelf. Then you will follow some formula, some method that I will arrange similar kinds of book in this shelf and other kinds of book in this shelf. You will divide them, you will categorize them, you will classify them. So that is known as the genre, right? So similarly in the literature, we can classify poetry and prose. And in the prose also, so we have subgenres. We have genre under a genre. They are subgenres. First, we will talk about lyric, and that is something which I like a lot. What is a lyric? Lyric is a short poem or a poem that describes our state of mind, of how we feel, about our emotions. That is lyric. It tells the person about our feelings, about our heart. And we have different kinds of lyrics. We have sonnet, we have ode, we have elegy, we have dramatic monologue, we have epithalamion, we have hymn, we have folk songs. We also have obede. And there are types of poetry. And we will discuss the types in some other video. But let us first talk about these 7 types. These 7 subgenres. First we have sonnet. Well, very famous. Sonnet. Basically sonnet word that is sonneto, and this means a little love song. So basically sonnet is a 14-line love poem and it follows some intricate rhyme scheme. Basically we have 2 kinds of sonnet. First we have Petrarchan sonnet, then we have Shakespearean sonnet. So Petrarchan sonnet comes from the Italian poet that is Petrarch, and it has an octave and a sestet. And then we have another version, an UK version of this sonnet that is developed by our William Shakespeare, that is Shakespearean sonnet, and it has 3 quatrains followed by a single couplet. So that is how we divide. And we also have a third kind of Spenserian sonnet. So basically sonnet is a kind of 14-line poem in which we express our love. For instance, we have Sonnet 18, which is written by William Shakespeare, in which he says that, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? In which there is this speaker, our speaker who is the poet, and there is this listener. And he tells that person or his beloved that, should I compare you to a summer's day? Because thy art more temperate. So now you know what is a sonnet. So you just have to remember a few points related to the sonnet. Like it is a 14-line poem, 1 major example from the sonnet, how many kinds of sonnet we have, and where it came from. Now let us talk about ode. What is ode? Ode is a elevated poem. It is also kind of lyric. For instance, if I have to praise somebody, if I have to talk highly about something, if I have to pay a tribute to somebody, then I would write a ode, right? It would be very elevated. In this sonnet, I was just talking about my personal feelings, like how I feel about that person, and it might be possible that I can talk about other things as well. But in the ode, you will talk about just one single person or subject. For instance, we have Shelley's Ode to the West Wind, where he talks about west wind, where he talks about that I want to have qualities like you, like a west wind. Like a west wind, I want to fly high. I want to, I want to destroy every rule of this world, like a west wind which destroys everything and which makes everything possible, which spreads the seeds, and those seeds are the beginning of something new. So like that, I want to be a west wind. And there he says that, oh, wild west wind, I have fallen on the thorns of life, that this life, these people, I do not want to live among them. Please lift me up. So that is a fine example of an ode. And there is this Keats. In 1819, he has written 6 big odes. It was the year of ode for our John Keats. He has written Ode on a Grecian Urn, Ode to a Nightingale, Ode to Autumn. है ना? And there is this famous line in Ode on a Grecian Urn where he says that beauty is truth, truth beauty, and that is all you need to know. What does that mean? Basically, it is Satyam Shivam Sundaram. This means that if something is beautiful, then it is the truth. And if something which has some truthfulness, then that thing is beautiful. So these two are interrelated. You cannot define beauty without truth, and you cannot define truth without beauty. There are different kinds of ode. Also, ode is something which is very serious, because if you're talking about something highly, if you're praising somebody, then it would be very serious and it would be very elevative, because you will exaggerate there. So that is ode. And we have different kinds of ode. We have Pindaric ode, that is regular ode. And then we have irregular ode, that is also known as Collean ode. On the name, and it is based on Abraham Cole. And that Pindaric ode is based on the basis of Greek poet Pindar, because it was this Pindar who, originated this kind of ode. So basically, regular ode has some kind of stanza format in which we have strophe, antistrophe, and epode. But this irregular ode, it does not follow any kind of rule. And that is why we call it irregular ode. We have Wordsworth's ode, that is Ode on Intimations of Immortality, the Great Ode. That is an example of irregular ode because it does not follow any rule or rhyme scheme. So now you know. There is also a third type of ode, which is Horatian ode, based on the Roman poet Horace. And it is Andrew Marvell who has written an Horatian ode, and the Keats who has written Ode to Autumn. It is an example of Horatian ode. I hope that you are noting down all of these important points, because this video is a master video and I'm very eager to share what I have in my mind for you. Then we have elegy. What is an elegy? If we feel loss, somebody who we love dies, if we feel loss about that person, loss about that person's memory, that presence, and some change that has happened, the change that we did not want. है ना? We used to live very happily with somebody, but now things have changed. We have parted our ways. We are no longer together. On that occasion, if we want to, express our emotions, then that would be an elegy. Of course, it would be very serious. It would be sad. Because here we are mourning, shok jatana. Because here we are mourning for somebody. That is why we write elegy. It is written in elegiac meter, that is alternating hexameter with pentameter lines. So basically, elegy is talking about the loss, the change, and it is a complaint of a lover. For instance, we have old poems like Wanderer, Seafarer, and we have this elegy written on a country churchyard by Thomas Gray, very famous. And then it is this John Donne who has written elegy, and this Chaucer who has written elegy, that is the Book of Duchess. The question that was there in your UGC NET examination. So that is elegy. We have different kinds of elegy. We will discuss all of these types and kinds in some other video, but I will just give you an overview of those types here, so that you do not feel that you lack some information. There is dirge. What is dirge? It is a very short elegy, and it is less formal. For instance, there is this the line in The Tempest by William Shakespeare, where the father of Ferdinand dies, and Shakespeare says that full fathom 5 your father lies, basically in the ocean. So that is dirge. We have pastoral elegies in which we have a rural setting, shepherds. So basically this is the elegy. And there are also famous elegies, like we have In Memoriam by Alfred Lord Tennyson, which he wrote for Arthur Hallam, who was his friend. And this Walt Whitman, who has written Oh Captain, My Captain, basically for the Abraham Lincoln, when he was assassinated. Now let us talk about dramatic monologue. What is dramatic monologue? It is full of drama. It is full of drama. It is a monologue. What is monologue? Monologue is when there is a mono, that is a single person, a single speaker is there, and he will speak in the form of a drama. In a form of a drama, he will use some dialogues. In the drama, we use dialogues. We use some actions. But in the poetry, there would be drama. There would be dialogue, right? And there can be a few actions also, right? But there wouldn't be no actions. But we would feel that, yes, there are some actions, right? The poet will give some hints. So that is dramatic monologue. We have dramatic monologue. Some of the features of dramatic monologue are that there would be one speaker who will speak, and the listener will listen, but listener will not say anything. Listener will just listen and he will not say anything. So basically here, the character of the speaker is getting revealed. A very fine example of this is My Last Duchess by Robert Browning. Robert Browning, who is very famous for dramatic monologues. In My Last Duchess, he reveals his character, that how he has killed his wife. There is this line where he says that I gave the commands and all the smiles stopped together. What does this mean? That the beloved, the wife, used to smile a lot at the other men. She was very happy-go-lucky kind of person. She was extrovert. She was very innocent, but she did not know that her husband is not liking this thing. He is not liking this thing, and he has full of toxicity and ego. And he gave the command that she should be killed, she should be executed. So she was killed. And from there we get to know about the character of this speaker, the Duke of Ferrara, the speaker of this poem. There is also one famous dramatic monologue, which is the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock, that is written by T.S. Eliot, where J. Alfred Prufrock, does not know how to propose his beloved, a girl, a woman. He does not know. He's very confused. It is very awkward, right? He is feeling, what should I wear? What should I eat? How should I look? I'm feeling very insecure, and whether she will like me or not. Should I disturb this universe? Should I disturb her at all? So this is a kind of monologue that is going on in his mind. There is a monologue, internal monologue that is going on. There is this conflict. He's not Hamlet. He's not Hamlet. He's not Hamlet King that, yes, if he will go and propose to her and she will say yes. No, he's no King Hamlet. Then we have epithalamion. What is epithalamion? Basically, epi means upon and thalamos. Thalamos means outside the bridal chamber. So basically, epithalamion is a kind of poem which poets used to recite or sing outside the bridal chamber, or we can say outside the room of wedded couples. There are some ancient poets like Sappho who used to write poems to celebrate the marriages. Basically, we have Edmund Spenser, who is very famous for writing epithalamion as a wedding gift to his wife on his own marriage. So this is all about this. And then we have hymn. What is hymn? Hymn is basically a religious song. Just imagine there are millions, thousands of people who has, collected at some place, and they are just praying to the God. And there is a song, religious song that they are singing for the God, for some great hero, for some spirit or some angel. So that is a hymn. That is known as hymn. There is this Martin Luther who has written hymns, and there is this hymn of John Milton who has written on the morning of Christ's nativity. Then we have folk songs. What are folk songs? Folk songs are basically folk. Folk songs are the songs that has been transmitted from our ancestors. We do not know the name of the author. We do not know when they were published. It is just our grandfathers and parents who has told us about some great hero like Beowulf, great heroes, great knights like Arthur Knights, King Arthur's Round Table Knights. So there are some stories, some songs, some legends, some myths that have been told to us by our grandparents, and we do not know whether that really exists or not. They are sung like songs, so these are known as folk songs. For instance, in India, we have so many folk songs, folk musics, like we have in Haryana, we have Ragini, in Maharashtra, we have Launi, and in Punjab, we have Gidda, Punjabi. There are various folk songs. In Assam, we have Bihu songs. So there are many. So this is lyric poetry for us. And now we have narrative. So poetry that are narrated. So basically narrative poetry are the poetry that are narrated, that are not in the form of lyric or in the form of song. No, it would be sung in a rhythm, in some meter, right? So that is narrative. We have to narrate like a story. So first we have the subgenre, which is epic, very famous. What is epic? Epic is something that is a narrative, long narrative story in the form of words. Here, the subject matter would be very great. It would be about fall of a man. It would be about war, like Trojan War. For instance, we have John Milton's Paradise Lost. Here we have Milton's grand style. The language is big. The language is grand. There are epic similes, metaphors. We have inversion. We have different types of languages there. Greek, Hebrew. So here also we have the setting. Setting is so diverse. Here the setting is heaven, hell, universe, the space between hell and heaven. And then we have the Iliad, the Odyssey. In the epics, we also have great characters. Here the characters are Saturn, Christ, God, sin, death, fallen angels. We have catalogs. Cataloging is also a technique in epic. Cataloging means to have a list of fallen angels. We have so many thousands of fallen angels who are fighting against the God. They are so horrible. So that is epic. We have two kinds of epic. We have traditional epic, we have literary epic. Traditional epics are the epics that have been, written not for the purpose of literature, not for the purpose, this would be read by somebody, right? For instance, we have Homer's Iliad, we have Odyssey, we have Beowulf. So these are not written deliberately. But we have literary epics that are written by some poet that, yes, the people would read it and they would learn something. There is a great message there. So in the epics, we have, yes, great messages. We have big themes here. There would be war, there would be long journeys. So these are some of the features of epics. You would surely get questions on these features. Please, that is why this video is very important. And let me tell you that there are our ongoing classes on linguistics in which Megha ma'am is, discussing in detail about the linguistics, the branches, the core, the different terms, dialects, register, creole, and in those 4 to 5 videos your linguistics will be completed. This we are saying, and these are all based on the updated pattern, updated latest PYQs of UGC net June 2025 and December 2025. Moving on to our topic, we have metrical tale. What are metrical tale? Metrical tale is basically what the Canterbury Tales is. So metrical tales are based on some, as we already know, there would be some meter, there would be a verse. And these are the short tales, short stories, but in verse format. For instance, we have Geoffrey Chaucer's The Canterbury Tales. We collected at Tabard Inn and they're all just sharing stories, laughing. So metrical tales are basically, they are very funny. They are used for satires and they have some meters. So these are the metrical tales. And then we have ballad. Ballad is very similar to our folk songs that we have discussed in lyric poetry. But here the difference is that the ballad would be in verse and there would be some story. So if your grandfathers, your grandparents tell you some story, if you recite that, then that would be a ballad. For instance, we have S.T. Coleridge's The Rime of the Ancient Mariner. So just imagine that you are sitting and somebody is telling you your story about some bird, that is albatross, and the albatross has been killed by a person, and that albatross is coming back to take the revenge, that now you have to suffer alone in this sea, all alone, water everywhere, no drop to drink. So this is basically a ballad. This is transmitted from the generations and we do not know where these come from. We have P.B. Shelley's Relics of the Ancient English Poetry. They are also ballad. And then there is the lyrical ballads by William Wordsworth, in which there is a poem We Are Seven. So where he is sharing about a cottage girl, 7 years old cottage girl. So this is basically a kind of story. So this is the ballad for us. Now let us talk about dramatic form. That is another subgenre of our poetry. So as I told you, the drama comes from poetry because it is this poetry which is our ancient form of expression. And drama is one of its expression. Drama is meant for the stage. Poetry, you can sing, you can write whenever you want, wherever you want. But drama is something that is meant for the stage. That you would sit here in the audience and there would be actors on the stage and they would be performing. There would be some dialogues. There would be a plot. That is dramatic expression. In the dramatic expression, we have tragedy, we have comedy, we have farce, we have melodrama. So what is tragedy is basically, just imagine there is one person, one hero who is very good, but he has some hamartia, he has some weakness, he has some tragical flaw in his or her personality. And because of that weakness, there would be a downfall of that person. For instance, we have Hamlet by William Shakespeare, we have Macbeth, we have Othello. So these are all tragedies of Shakespeare. And there are many tragedies. We have the ancient tragedy of Oedipus Rex, that is written by Sophocles, where the Oedipus, the king Oedipus, he discovers that he has killed his own father and he has married his own mother. And then when he gets to know about this truth, he will pluck out his eyes. He will pluck out his eyes in front of the audience on the stage, not in real. Definitely, he just pretends in the acting. So that is tragedy. Because The audience cannot see the kind of fate, the kind of pain that he has to go through. He was looking for the killer of his father, but later he discovered that he is the one who has killed his father. So basically, there is a catharsis, that relief that the audience gets after seeing a tragedy. Because there are some emotions that we cannot, cannot get relief by. So when we see the other person suffering, and when we see that the other person is getting punished for that sin, so from there we learn that we should not do that. There is a fear. And for the hero, we feel a pity. So there is a pity and fear. There is a catharsis, a relaxation, a purgation, a cleansing effect that we have after watching tragedies. This is according to Aristotle. And I hope you are already familiar with the definition of tragedy that he has given, that it is an imitation of an action that has some magnitude. And it is not in the form of narration. It would be dramatic. And it arouses pity and fear. And then we have comedy. Well, when it comes to comedy, we should know that here the author, the writer, the playwright, let me tell you what is play and what is drama. So basically, if you're writing the play, if you're writing Hamlet, then that is known as play. But if you are showing Hamlet on the stage to the audience, then this is known as drama. So this is the difference. Playwright is the person who is showing the drama on stage, and the dramatist is the person who is writing that play. Now you know. So comedy is basically when there is this comedian, the writer, who is writing a comedy, who is making a plot in such a way that it will make the audience laugh. It will make you laugh. There would be various such behaviors, some events, some activities on the part of the hero or the characters that it will make you laugh a lot. So that is the comedy. We have comedies of Shakespeare. We have Twelfth Night. We have The Merchant of Venice. And there are the comedies of Volpone also. We have Ben Jonson's Volpone, very famous comedy. And in the comedies also, there are various types of comedy. We have new comedy, we have old comedy. In the new comedies, from the new comedies comes our comedy of manners. We have comedy of humors. So these are the types that we will discuss on some other day. So now let us talk about farce. What is farce? Basically, farce is the extreme stage of comedy. It is the extreme of comedy that in the comedy, the purpose of the writer was to make us learn something. He wanted to teach us something, because we just do not laugh at the characters. We laugh at their follies. We laugh at their foolishness. But in the farce, we laugh at their costumes, their absurd behavior. Just imagine that there are two twins who are born at the same time. They drifted apart, but later they get connected to each other in the same town. So there would be some confusion. There would be some coincidences. That is farce. In the farce, there is mistaken identities, disguised forms. So that is farce. There would be vulgar jokes, and it will make the people laugh. And we call it belly laughs. So this is farce. You would tell me in the comment section a very famous example of farce. And then we have melodrama. Now basically in 19th century, there used to be workers or masses who wanted some entertainment. So melodrama is basically, just imagine there is a hero and there is this villain who is very evil. There is this heroine and there are exaggerated emotions. There is this hero coming, and then there is this villain, exaggerated dialogues between the two. They're fighting and then it will save the heroine. So basically melodrama is when the emotions are at peak, when the expression, the emotions, the drama is at its peak. That is melodrama. So in the 19th century, the Victorian age is full of such melodramas. So that is melodrama, right? And that is why we say that if there is somebody who is behaving in a very exaggerated manner, who is behaving zor se bol raha hai, has raha hai, dialogue baji kar raha hai. So what we call it, that do not do some melodrama. Do not be melodramatic. That is why. And now it is the time that we do cover the genre of prose. So basically, what is prose? So prose means that we have to express our feelings, our emotions, and the subject matter that we have, but without any rhythm or rhyme. Now we would write sentences, not the lines. We would also take care of the grammar, and it would be a long work. So basically, in the prose, we have two kinds of subgenres. First, we have fiction, and then we have non-fiction. In the fiction, what is fiction? So basically, fiction is something that we always imagine. Fiction is not based on the real life. Fiction is not about the real life, real events, or real people. Fiction is basically how we imagine, what we imagine. It is our fictional world. That is fiction. There is Philip Sidney who said in An Apology for Poetry, which is his most famous essay, he said that a writer, a poet, never affirms, thus never lies. That writer never affirms something. He does not claim any truth. And therefore, if there is a person who does not claim any truth, that person is also not lying at the same time. Because if you are not claiming anything, that it means that you are not lying. So a poet has a poetic license to make his own word, make his own fictionalized word. In the fiction, we have many subgenres. Here I have given you 8 subgenres, and there are various types of these genres. First, we will talk about the folklore. What is folklore? Now, folklore is, as we have already discussed about the folk songs, folk musics, and ballads. So, folklore is a similar thing. Folklore is a kind of subgenre where the old stories, old myths, old legends, and old riddles have come to us through the mouth of our ancestors. Folklore, the old stories like we have Cinderella, Snow White, Aladdin, and Indian Panchtantra stories. So these are all a part of folklore because they have come to us orally through our forefathers, and we do not know whether they exist or not. So that is known as folklore. So in the literature also we have different folklores. For instance, we have Indian Panchtantra. So that is an example of folklore. And Cinderella, Snow White, they are also an example of folklore. Then we have novella. There are various kinds of novels. First we have novel, then we have novella, we have short story, we have novelette, we have flash fiction. So there is a minute difference among all of these. So let me clarify these to you also. First, we have novel is a long narrative work. Novel is something that you can read and it can take you a week, a month, or maybe a year. It depends upon you. So novel is a long narrative work. It would be having various paragraphs. It can be, more than 75,000 words. It can be more than 75,000 words. So that is known as novel. In English, we have many novels, and novel is very famous nowadays in this modern world. We have novels of Pride and Prejudice that is written by Jane Austen. Very famous novel in which we have Elizabeth, we have Darcy, and it is a kind of romance fiction. And then we have novels like Pamela, which is an epistolary novel, is the novel in which we have exchange of letters. And there are various novels. We have The Midnight Children by Salman Rushdie. And in the Indian, we have Raja Rau's Kanthapura, Mulk Raj Anand, and many such authors who are famous for novels. So that is a novel. Novella is a short version of novel. It can be around 17,000 to 40,000 words. That is novella. A fine example of novella is Animal Farm, which is by George Orwell. It is totally based on the totalitarian regime of Russia. And it is also an example of Beast Fable, which we would be discussing shortly. So that is novella. And The Billy Budd is also a novella. So whenever you try to read a text, so whenever you read a work, you should always know about the genre of that. Then we have novelette. Now, novelette is another short version of novella. It is around 7,500 words to 17,000 words. That is novelette. Then comes our short story, very famous. Short story is basically in novels. In novels, we have many characters. We have complex plots. The plot will be, there can be subplots also. There would be many characters, hundreds of characters, even in some novels. We have the novels of Charles Dickens, like Tom Jones, longest novel of Charles Dickens, Hard Times. So there would be many characters, complex plot hoga, and it would tell us about the human, about the world, how they think, in the conflict of their mind. But in the short story, what happens is that there would be a single incident, there would be a single plot, and there would be a few characters. It can be 4 or 5 characters, not more than this. So that is a short story. There is this American short story writer who is Edgar Allan Poe, who is very famous for short stories and is often known as the father of short stories. When it comes to these short stories, we have The Telltale Heart, in which there is a murderer who kills somebody, an old man, and he will hide the body of that old man under the floorboard, under the floor of the house. And when the police comes in order to detect, in order to investigate, then the heart of that victim, the heart of that person, of that corpse is still beating. And because of that beating, the speaker, the narrator of this Telltale Heart short story, he gets anxiety. He just thinks that how it can be possible, from where the sound is coming of this beating heart. And he becomes so tensed. He has so much of anxiety. He becomes so traumatic that he himself confesses the guilt to the police. So that is a short story. So in short story, we have a few characters, one plot, and it would be shorter than novelette. There is also O. Henry, another American short story writer who is very famous for a short story that is The Gift of the Magi. Then we have flash fiction. What is flash fiction? Like a flash, it is another short version of even short story. So flash fiction is basically, it can be basically 100 to 1000 words. That is flash fiction. So now you know the difference between different kinds of novel forms, from novels to the flash fiction. You too tell me in the comment section what kind of literary genre you enjoy the most. And then we have parable. What is parable? Is basically, it is also a short, we can say, prose in a narrative format without any rhyme. But parable is religious. Parable is, for instance, we have Jesus Christ in the Bible. So it was Jesus, the most favorite method. It was Jesus Christ, the most favorite method to teach the mankind. And this method was parable. These are the short teachings from the religious books, from the Bibles, from the New Testaments, from the Ramayana, from the Gita. So those are known as parables. For instance, we have the prodigal son, very famous parable in which there is a son and he has been given some money from the father. But what he does, he wastes all the money. He spends all the money because he was prodigal. He was a spendthrift. And he do not save a single penny. And then he returns home to his father. But his father will not punish him. Why? This is the moral story. That if someone do something wrong, then we should not punish that person. We should forgive that. So the father will hug the son and they will forget this thing. And this is the kind of moral lesson that we should forgive. So this is known as parable, where we have short teachings. And then comes the fable. What is fable? Fable is also like parable, but here the characters will be animal-like, or we can say will be animals. Here the animals will represent humanity. For instance, we have the fable of the fox and the grapes. What is the moral teaching here? That one day there was this fox. She could not reach the grapes. She could not reach the grapes in order to eat them. And what she says that the grapes are sour and I do not want them. So basically this means that if a person cannot get something in their life, then the person will give an excuse and tell that I cannot get it because that thing does not deserve me and that thing is not good at all. So basically from here comes the sour grapes phrase. So that is a fable. We also have a fable of a hare and tortoise race, and from where we get to know that slowly and steadily wins the race. So that is fable. And so these are basically the beast fable of which I'm talking about. We have a beast fable in our Volpone, Ben Jonson's Volpone, where Volpone represents fox, where Mosca, the servant of Volpone, represents a fly. So that is fable. And then we have mystery, thriller, and romance. Now these are other genres. We have mystery. What is mystery? Is like a mystery has to be solved by somebody. It can be a hero. It can be God. So there would be some mystery. There would be some murder. There would be some puzzle. There would be some theft, that somebody has stolen my pen. Then I will discover it. I will become the hero of that mystery, and I will discover the person. So that is known as mystery. So our Agatha Christie, who is very famous for mystery novels, mystery works. She also has a character which is Hercule Poirot, she's very famous for mysteries. And because of her detective fiction, her mystery fiction, the age in which she was writing, because of the trend that she had set, this was known as the golden age of detective fiction. Then we have thrillers. What are thrillers? Is basically like people are escaping, where a hero is escaping from a villain. There would be rising tension. There would be suspense. That is known as thriller. Means that it will give you some thrills. It will give you some goosebumps. You will feel the fear of the hero in your heart. That is known as thriller. And we have romance. What is romance? Is basically there are two people, a boy and a girl, who are very far from each other. They would fight some circumstances, some society, and then in the last they meet. That is romance. Now mythology means that there used to be, in earlier times, what happens is that when man was not able to make sense of this world, he made some efforts to make the sense of this world. And there comes our myths. Mithya. कहते हैं ना that this is just a myth, means that there are some of the things that we do believe that yes, this exists. We believe that yes, there is a God. We believe that yes, there is a certain kind of God, certain kind of deity, mountain deity that we should worship. Because when, for instance, I'll tell you, when the light was not discovered, when the current was not discovered, people used to believe that this thunder lightning, this thunderbolt and lightning in the sky is because that the gods are angry with us. It is a kind of curse to us. They did not know about the electrons. They did not know about the electrons or current. So this was a myth in those times. So this is known as myth. The things that we do believe exists. So that is a myth. So in the literature also we have different myths. Another example of myth can be this, our Beowulf. Because we believe that a person named Beowulf, a legend like Beowulf, used to exist. So that can be a myth. Arthur legends, Arthurian knights. We do not know whether King Arthur ever existed or not. That can be also said as a myth. So that is myth. Now comes our non-fiction. So we were talking about fiction. So fiction was based totally on our imagination. What we can imagine. We can imagine myths. We can imagine folklores. We can imagine short stories. We can imagine novels, flash fiction, everything. But we cannot imagine about someone's life, about day-to-day activities, and about the reality of this contemporary world. Here comes the role of non-fiction. Non-fiction means it is based on the real people, real life events, reality. That is non-fiction. This is not fiction. This is not the fictionalized world. Even in the non-fiction, if you want some fiction, then you will tell the audience that you believe on such things, that this is the reality. Here, even your lies becomes the truth. Basically, this is the idea. So in the non-fiction, we have first work, that is biography. What is biography? The genre of biography is very important for you to know. There is a difference between biography, autobiography, memoir, which we would talk about. So biography means that biography is a kind of book that is written by somebody else on us. For instance, I'm here. But what if I die one day? What if I live one day? What if I die? Or maybe when I am living, there would be some person who is writing a biography of mine. Then he would or she would write about my day-to-day activities, my family, my colleagues, my hobbies, what I used to do, what was my vision, and what kind of historical and political and economical conditions I used to live in. So that is biography. So here we have the biographers like Isaac Walton, who wrote many biographies, also of the John Donne. We have first autobiography, that is St. Augustine's Confessions, very important, which is also a net PYQ. And when it comes to biography, Wings of Fire, which is the biography of APJ Abdul Kalam. So this is what biography is. And what is autobiography? Autobiography is basically written by that person itself. Now, if I am writing an autobiography, here I will write, not somebody, but I will write. Here I will tell that what are my experiences, what are the conditions that I am living, what is my vision. So it would be I. Here I am writing. So I would be the person. I am the subject matter here and I am the writer. But here the subject matter is me, but the person is others. So that is biography. But if I am the writer of this, then it is an autobiography. So for instance, we have Mahatma Gandhi's The Story of My Experiments with the Truth. That is an autobiography that he has written. Here he has told about the experiments that he had done his whole life. There are some people who always blame him for the things that he have done. But in this autobiography, he tries to justify that why he took certain decisions. It was his experiments with the life, basically. So that is an autobiography. In the autobiography, we also have Nelson Mandela's Long Walk to Freedom, that for how 27 years he was a prisoner in Robben Island. And I recommend you to read a few biographies and autobiographies, because it is always better to learn from others' mistakes. Life is too short for making the mistakes and then learning from them. Then comes the memoir. What is memoir? Now, memoir means that if I pick a certain incident, a certain memory from my life, and then I write about that, that is known as memoir. It is just based on a certain incident. For instance, if Newton was sitting under a tree and the apple falls on his head, so particular that incident will be taken out from his life and we would talk about that only. So that is a memoir. It is basically based on a particular incident. There will be just one single plot. That is a memoir. Then comes the diary and journal. So what is diary? Basically, if you are just, writing about your thoughts, about what you feel about the world and your day-to-day activities and whatever you have in your mind. So if you're writing on a piece of paper or in some notebook, that becomes your diary. So that is diary, or we can say journal. Basically, there are some writers, some diarists who never thought that the diary would come into the public. For instance, we have Samuel Pepys, a famous diarist, who recorded the Great Plague of London, who recorded the Great Fire of London. And from his diaries, we get to know about the Dryden Age, the age of Charles II also, the Restoration Age. So that is the diary of Samuel Pepys, very important. And then we have John Evelyn also, who is also a diarist. There is the famous diary of Anne Frank. Now, she was living at a time when there was a discrimination against the Jew. There was Hitler, and the Nazis kept Jews in a concentration camps. So in those times, Anne Frank was a girl of a very small age. She escaped, and she wrote a diary for 2 years in which she talks about what she feels and about the world around her. And one day she was discovered and she was arrested and she was killed. And she dies at the age of just 15. Just think about this. Just 15. But the diary she has written for 2 years, that plays a really important role because she has told so many things, and from her point of view, obviously. So that is a diary. This also comes under the literature, the non-fiction literature. Then comes our anecdote. So basically, anecdote is like a memoir, but anecdote is a very small story. So, for instance, if I'm sitting here and I just tell you about my school days, something that I remember, oh, let me tell you a story. I just remember an incident where I used to, so just a small incident that I strike my mind, that is anecdote. So there are some people who always like storytelling. They always, in their communication, storytelling is very important. They always add some anecdotes. So that is known as anecdote. Now comes the essays. So what are essays? Basically, essays are something, essays are prose works in which we have a single topic. We have a single idea. So, for instance, I pick up a topic of studies. I pick a topic of studies. So we'll talk about the studies, that how to study, what is study, why should we study. So it is a kind of a specific topic on which we are talking about, that is essay. And essays were brought to life by Michel de Montaigne, who was a French writer, French essayist we would call. He wrote essays, and those essays were known as attempts because he was making attempts on writing about a particular topic. He wrote about sleeping, he wrote about illness, he wrote about friendship, he wrote about wars, and so many topics. And similarly, we have in UK Francis Bacon, who also attempted to write essays. And he also wrote very famous essays like of friendship, of studies, of marriage. So this is Francis Bacon. And we have also modern essays. Later we have Richard Steele and Joseph Addison, who used to write essays, but they used to write essays in the periodicals. So what are periodicals? Now I'll tell you. Periodicals are basically the most, we can say, updated form of prose, because they are produced weekly on alternative days like second day, third day, fourth day. So weekly, monthly, yearly. So periodicals are produced after certain periods, after certain intervals. So that is why they are known as periodicals. So in those periodicals, they used to write essays. So this is the difference. In the periodicals, we have these Joseph Addison and Richard Steele. And we would call periodicals the most updated form of prose work because they are very quick. They will tell you about the recent latest newses, that what happened today. In periodicals, may we have magazines because they are produced weekly and they will give the recent updates. So they are very quick and they have all the updates and you can easily read them. So that is periodicals. And you should know that in which age of English literature we had periodicals. If you have watched our video of history of English literature, in which just in 1 hour video, and you will get an overview of all the important events of history of English literature. So there you will learn that periodicals are very important and in which age they come. Then we have reference materials. Now most of students do not know about this. What are reference materials and do they ever come under the genre of literature? So genre of non-fiction. So reference materials are for the reference. You need not read them cover to cover or from the beginning to the end. They are just for the sake of your consultation. For instance, if I do not know the meaning of a single word, then I would just go to a dictionary and I will search the meaning and then I will close the dictionary and I will continue my reading. So reference materials are our dictionaries, encyclopedias, almanacs. So they're very handy. Like atlas, in the geography we have atlas. So they're handy. We just consult them. They are just for the sake of reference. So that is reference materials. So yeah, this is all about different genres and subgenres in literature. So I hope you have liked this video. So before ending this video, just listen that literature is a very beautiful subject, and I want you to share this video with your friends, with the person who loves literature, who does not know the differences between different kinds of genres, because we have seen that on YouTube there are not many videos which will tell you about the such key differences between different genres, because students often do not know of the basics, and if you do not know the basics you cannot never go for the advanced ones. So what if in your examination you will see another question that what is the difference between biography and autobiography? So that is why I want you to share this video with the person who loves literature or who does not love literature, because after watching this video, he would definitely fall in love with English literature. So I hope you have liked this video and subscribe our channel for more such informative videos and for more such qualitative contents. Right now, we are giving free classes for June 2026 examination, UGC NET English examinations, and at present we are doing linguistics. In linguistics, Megha ma'am is giving you a detailed lecture based on the recent UGC NET examination patterns of June and December 2025 attempts. So stay connected and thank you.